Tiffany Lawless, and I am the Coleman Fellow in Behavioral Psychology this year. And I fulfilled my fellowship at Spence Laboratories at the University of Iowa. Spence Laboratories, in case you don't know, is the psychological research center on the University of Iowa campus, and it, most importantly for our purposes, it houses all of the controlled access animal labs, like the pigeon lab where I worked. I worked with Dr. Edward Wasserman and my graduate mentor, Jennifer Ruff, and in this lab, we are always running 5 to 9 experiments constantly. But I was very lucky in that I get to focus on one experiment for the duration of time that I'm there. I worked on all of them, but I got to see one from conception through to rough draft publication. My focus project, the one I worked on, is we were seeing whether pigeons could learn to identify stimuli that they don't normally see in the wild. There's a lot of literature on whether pigeons can identify things that they would need to identify to survive. They know that this is a cat, that is a chair, this can hurt me, that doesn't move. But that's adaptive for them to know, so it makes sense that they would be able to learn that. What we were trying to figure out is whether they could identify things that they would have no survival reason to identify. So what we did was we blew up pictures to the microscopic level, which pigeons would never see in the wild. They do not use microscopes, obviously. Yeah. And we were trying to get them to categorize those things into categories. So this process that we went through, we had to locate all the stimuli, which is harder than it sounds because they have to be the same color, they have to be the same shape, they have to be the same size. They cannot differ on any parameters other than what you want the pigeons to learn. Otherwise, the pigeons will start to categorize them in strange ways that to humans don't make sense. And then we would map out our phases. My personal experiment was 15 training days and then 5 testing days for these pigeons. It was relatively short. And then what I didn't know coming in was that I was going to have to learn to be a computer programmer. So you make all of these computer programs so that the machines can run the pigeons when you are not in the room. And the machine knows when the pigeon is right, and it knows to give the food to the pigeon in that case. And you make 8 of these programs for each pigeon. And who knew that I was going to be a computer programmer? But I very much enjoyed learning that. And then you collect all of your data, of course. And then the methodology for figuring out how to represent the data was different from anything that I had encountered before. Usually, I'd gone into experiments having an idea of what I wanted to write about beforehand. But for this particular one, we just graphically represented everything we possibly could, which essentially means I made 200 charts on everything in the data. And then you figure out, oh, that is what is most interesting. That is what I will write about. And it's very time-consuming, but it's also very effective, and I really liked that methodology. And I was very, very fortunate in that I was present for the beginning stages of writing the publishable article. That process, unfortunately, takes months, years, so I was not there for that. Still going on. Just so you know, that is a pigeon in his little Skinner box, and he is identifying a stimuli right there. The results of my personal experiment, in case you are interested, the pigeons did learn to categorize the stimuli, but then when we gave them testing stimuli that should go in the same categories, they didn't do so well, in case, yeah. Which is disappointing, but does tell us things. It tells us that they can memorize stimuli very well, but when asked to generalize, they're not so good at that. What I personally learned intellectually, obviously in addition to all of those life skills that you would need to run these experiments, I learned to use many different computer programs to analyze data, to make presentations, to create these charts. And that's very useful in my field. And I went through ethical training, so now I can ethically train rats and pigeons, in case you're looking for that. I don't know. Oh no, go back. Okay. And personally, which I think is almost more important, I learned to find my own way. In school, my experiences have always been to have a professor, a teacher there telling me step by step, this is what you have to do, this is how you do it, which is very helpful. But in this particular experience, my mentor would hand me a stack of data and say, go make a chart. Okay, so I go back to my little computer cubicle and I would figure out how to make this chart, which was a little more time consuming, but I feel like those skills that I gained will stay with me much longer because I learned to figure them out for myself. Yes. And then the impact of this fellowship throughout my life. Obviously, there's the academic impact. I learned to apply all of these skills that I have been learning in my classes and in my research here on campus. Also, I found it very inspiring. I now have a stack of notebooks, approximately this high, full of experiments that I can do with pigeons. It's beautiful. And then the professional impact, I did a lot of networking, and what surprised me was I did a lot of networking outside of cognitive behavioral psychology. All of the grad students in the psych building go to lunch together. So I was able to meet social psychologists and clinical psychologists and counseling psychologists. And I learned all of these things about all these different fields, even though my personal field was only cognitive psych. And I was very grateful for that. And with that, I would like to end and thank very much everyone who donated to allow me to do this in honor of Reverend Andrew Coleman. And I would, of course, like to thank my advisors at my site, Jennifer Ruff and Dr. Edward Wasserman, and my faculty advisor, Dr. Sue Astley. Thank you so much. Thank you.